What's up, Average Joes? I got another list for you, and it is low commitment series. So, fantasy is a genre that is completely saturated with series. A lot of them are very long. There's a ton of trilogies, but series dominates fantasy and sci fi genre. So, when picking out books, sometimes it's hard to commit to a new series because of how long it could be, how much of a commitment it is. And I'm specifically talking things that are longer than a trilogy. I mean, there's even some trilogies out there that are a little bit of a commitment because the page count is like 800 per book or something like that. So series can always feel like a commitment. So when you start a new series, you might be feeling like you are making a commitment to a new series, and some could be very daunting the longer and bigger that they are. um, I totally get the intimidation factor. I have, for a couple of years pushed off a few series because they are longer or they seem like much more of a commitment. And while trilogies aren't that much of a commitment, there's a lot the majority of people read trilogies as it is. I know that there's a lot of series out there that people might want to fit in or work, or ones you can work in between other trilogies or larger reads, whether it's they're your giant big books and all of those things. So I wanted to pick out some series that are not trilogies. I'm specifically naming books that are not trilogies, and talk about the ones that aren't that much of a commitment and are even actually good to add in because it is a low commitment and you can just pick them up wherever you want. Pick up a book, read it, don't pick up the series again for another couple of months. Just really, really just sprinkle it in as you read some of the other your other planning, some of your other bigger reads, your other trilogies. Because if you're like me, that and how I read trilogies is I wait till the whole thing's out for one, and then usually in a 2 month span, I'll read the entire trilogy. Sometimes I'll space it out a little more depending on the lengths or what it is, but typically I binge the trilogies and I'll read something else in between, so it's all fresh and I just go through it. So, as I've been terrible about in the past, if you like some of these lists or the reviews and books that I talk about, please like and subscribe because I plan on keep on doing it. So, get into my low commitment series. I'm going to start off with a big one because I've recently recommended this to people, and pretty much everybody that started the series has kept with it and has really, really loved it. Or if you didn't like it, that's just a completely different reason than the size and the length of the series, and that is Dresden Files. I've told a few people about it recently, and I tell them, yeah, it's 17 books and it's going to go to 25, and they're just like, holy crap, I don't know if I can commit to that. But then they start and they do one or two, and it's like, it's like, wow, yeah, this is addicting, and I can just sprinkle it in. I've been working on Dresden for a year and a half at least, and I'm only on book 9. I do all of them through audiobooks because they're fantastic audiobooks. That's another reason why it's great, because the audiobooks are amazing. And if you do audiobooks and if you like to sprinkle in your credits, if you're only getting one a month, then it's easy to break them up. You can just pick them up. So I sprinkle them in between other books and other series that I'm listening to, and between my nonfictions that I listen to. Dresden is also perfect for this because they are episodic in nature. And what that means is each book is an individual story in its own. And there is an overarching narrative and plot with characters that carry over. So every book you get another piece to the bigger pie, but each book is its own individual entity. And that makes it fantastic for being a low commitment series that you can just sprinkle in here and there. I plan on dialing back on the Dresden because I think I've read 4 or 5 just this year alone. I've really gotten into it, but because I'm at 9 and they're only at 17, and there's going to be long gaps between later on, I'm going to want to space mine out to like slowly work up to it so that maybe some other books are out by the time I get up there. So Dresden 100% I would recommend because it's very episodic in nature. Next one, Raira, the Chronicles and Revelations. I have only read technically 4 books in the Revelations books, even though there's 3 bindings and each binding has 2 books, so 6 books. But I've read each binding just like as one book. Anyway, Raira is fantastic and perfect because you have the 2 main characters that you follow along. You have a couple other secondary characters that you follow along as well, and each of those books aren't super long and their plots are pretty contained. But there's also an overarching plot. They're not super complicated, but the The banter, dynamic, and everything is very, very fun and easily digestible. And you can read one or two of them, put them down, come back months later, and pick up right where you left off, and you're not going to be left in question. It is very, very well written so that you're never really confused about what's going on, and that makes it really great to pick up and put down and go back and forth. I am on Era of No. I'm on the third binding of Revelations, and I finished the first one in like January. I probably won't pick up the next one until like the fall, and I have no issues or no qualms with. I don't think it's going to be an issue at all to just pick it up and where I left off, and then I'll take another long many months break, and then I'll go back and do Chronicles, and also I feel like once again it'll be just fine. Next one, I guess you could almost a caveat. Really, any middle grade series you could do this in because I mean, they're for middle grade. So if you're an adult reading these, you'll be able to catch on pretty quick to what's going on. And the refreshers are pretty pronounced there in middle grade because you're talking about the age range that you're going for. So Keepers of the Lost is one of the ones that I have recommended a few times. It is a really good series because, everybody's, Harry Potter's always had its time in the sun. But Keepers of the Lost is really, really good for a middle grade series. Lots of magic, really cool world building. And, you can take many months breaks. And if you're into some really, really heavy adult fantasy, then sometimes the middle grade is just what you need to palate cleanse and ease back a little bit, which is what I've honestly used it for. Next one, I guess this would be a small caveat, and that's because I haven't read any of these books at all yet, but I've been building up to it, and I've realized that it's much less intimidating than I thought, and that's Discworld. And although Discworld is 40 books, people hear that 40 books and then all of the entry points, and I 100% agree that it was intimidating for a while to me. And I've had to watch a few videos on starting places and where I want to start with Discworld because there's so many of them and everybody has a different opinion. Alan at the Library of Alexandria has a fantastic video of this. He is a huge fan of Discworld and Terry Pratchett books, so I would check his out. I'll try and link his down below. But once you figure out your starting plate, it's really good and easy to just throw those in because they are pretty quick. They're very lighthearted and funny. It is a giant world, but if you stick to a main chain of um, storyline, because there's so many different storylines and they just interact in that same world. If you stay with one storyline, you can just throw it in there whenever you want, and they seem like really, really awesome palette cleansers. So fun, lighthearted reads. That's kind of the name of the game when it comes to palette cleansers in general, if they're not episodic. So I would recommend Discord. I've wanted to throw them in there as well, and I almost did earlier this year until I started my Kindle Unlimited binge reading. But this is definitely one that is going to be one that I use. Next, Star Wars. If you didn't know that I'm going through the Star Wars EU, the old canon, legends, whatever you want to call it, I'm going through that. I started from the beginning. I released a video earlier this year of reading the first two. I just read the third one, and I'm going to read the fourth one hopefully in June because I really need to catch up on those. But there are so many books in the Star Wars universe. If you look at the legends, I think have been fantastic so far, even though they don't count or whatever Disney says. Going back, each book is an individual story. They kind of have connections a little bit, but they're all different authors write these. And you can just throw them in, especially if you like Star Wars, because you're still getting that Star Wars world. And it just feels so nice to jump in as a Star Wars fan. You already kind of know a lot of the settings, some of the races, some of the intricacies going on. And then it's just, okay, now what's this story about? What are these characters? Cool, let's do this, knock this out in a couple of days. And then let's go on to whatever else I was reading. The Star Wars books, specifically the legends that I'm talking about, are really good for that, and what I've been using as well. And you can usually get them pretty cheap. Next one, I didn't want to go all fantasy and sci-fi on this one, so I'm going to throw out one murder mystery series, and that is the Sebastian St. Cry murders. There's also like 16 of these books. They are super short. They're under 300 pages. That's super short to me. Under 300 pages, so you can knock them out really quick in a couple of days. Each book is also episodic, so that each book has a murder mystery, but then you're also following the characters and their narrative and then their overarching plot that's going on behind the scenes behind these murders, and then they connect between the books, but then each book still has its own murder mystery. So how all of that lines up is awesome to follow, and we throw these in all the time. I think I'm on the sixth and I own the first nine. My wife is two ahead of me. In between our fantasies, we're just like, yeah, we want a murder mystery. Let's just do it right now. And we'll throw it in and we'll read it. So those are fantastic to throw in, especially if you like murder mysteries and those mystery type books. It is a early 1800 London setting. If that's also something that you like, that atmospheric vibe. So I've recommended this series a few times to the murder mystery fans out there, and I would totally recommend it some more. And the last one I'm going to say is the Queen's Thief series. This is a 6 book series that I've read the first 3. And when I first read them, I binged the first 3 back to back to back because they were so good. I had to force myself to stop after the third because I saw that at the time of reading them, the 6th book didn't come out for like 2 years. Well, the 6th book came out last year, although it's only come out in hardback, and I own all the 5 in paperback, and I don't know why it hasn't come out in paperback yet, but it's kind of annoying because I would, I'm not a huge stickler for books matching, but in this instance, it might as well. If I have all the other ones that match, I might as well have the last one, but that's irrelevant. I have no issues. I know I'll be able to just pick up on the 4th book where I left off and carry on with what I'm doing. It's not overly complicated, the world and the story, but each individual plot is just so smart, and the moves that the main character makes is I've mentioned this before. It's just like watching a chess match, and at the end of each book, a whole bunch of the moves happen. You're just like, holy cow! I see how this happened. I see the ties now, looking back. So it's like a mystery fantasy setting is what it is. So I'm halfway through, and maybe by the end of this year, I will pick up the next ones, or at least the next one, and then eventually I'll buy the 6th. But I have no issues picking that up because it is 6 books, but you can space them out, and they're easy to just pick up and follow along with. So I'm really interested to know what some of your low commitment series are, whether it be fantasy, sci-fi, mysteries, anything like that. What are some low commitment ones that you like to throw in that are easy to just add in there, or have really that you've kind of lowered down a little bit on the intimidation factor? And then lastly, what I've mentioned recently is down below, I have a link to my Kindle Unlimited list. This is not a go buy me a book list. I want to make that known. This is just a, hey, these are the Kindle Unlimited books that are on my radar. Go check those out if they're interested to you as well. So I'm just sharing what's on my list if I don't talk about them, because I can't talk about every single book I come across here. So if you're looking for a new book, whether it's Kindle Unlimited or in general, I have a lot of books on that specific Kindle Unlimited list. Check it out. Get the book yourself. Whatever. Tell me how it is. But I just wanted to share my list and what I have for wants to read for that. So let's chat more down in the comments about low commitment reads.